This is revision of primary market research, and this is for component 1 A and B. So this is the component for coursework, and while doing it in the style of the exam, so you get to learn exam techniques at the same time. Here's your 6-mark question in the style of the exam, but it is for coursework. So we're going to do this as some in-class assessment, and it should help with exam techniques as well. Damien is thinking of different ways in which to research the market for candle making workshops, with the aim of meeting his current and potential customers' needs. He is considering primary research in the first instance. Evaluate which 2 methods of primary market research Damien should use to ensure he can find out and meet the needs of his customers who regularly and/or who might attend his candle making workshops in the future. In your answer, you should include an analysis of the key advantages and disadvantages of using primary market research to understand customer needs, a conclusion that recommends which research method would be the most effective for Damien. So let's break down this question. We've got Damien, he's a candle making workshop business, and he was thinking of doing some primary research. That's our first point. Now, the second thing to look at is the exam command word, evaluate. What is this asking you to do? So let's make sure we know what evaluate means. I know you know the word every day, but we need to make sure we've got exam head on. Evaluate is asking you to consider several options, ideas and arguments, and then come to a conclusion. So an evaluate 6-mark question asks for both sides of the argument and a decision. The question is asking you to evaluate 2 methods of primary market research. So let's make sure we remember what primary research means. That's the one that you do first hand, the business doing it themselves. There are several methods to choose from, things like face-to-face interviews, phone interviews, focus groups, observations, questionnaires, surveys, testing the product, taste testing, and probably more as well, but those are the ones that we look at. So all of those are the things we need to consider, but you only need to look at 2. So here's the nitty-gritty of what you need to get up to, and so that's why I've switched it to green, so that you know that this is all about your content. So you've got to look at your method that you want to choose. You need to choose one that you can confidently write about, and you're going to write about the advantages of it and the disadvantages of that same method. So you've got at least 2 small paragraphs to write on the first method you're going to choose. Right, let's hope you've got to grips with stating what the market research method is and then evaluating why it's a good method for Damien. Remember, it's not just about stating what it is. We've got to make sure we've got to think of it in terms of this candle making workshop. First method done. We now need to do exactly the same for the second method. We go through the advantages and disadvantages of the second method that you've chosen, covering the same amount of detail as you've done in the first method, and making sure that we've evaluated, explained why it's an effective and a good method, and hopefully relevant to Damien. Now folks, you're ready for your conclusion. This is where you need to make a decision on which primary research is suitable for Damien, and most importantly, absolutely importantly, ridiculously importantly, is justify your choice. So let's investigate the process that we need to go through to approach the 6-mark question, and we'll look at it in terms of these colour visual aids. It's meant to be a exam technique, so that you're sitting in the exam and all of a sudden in your head pops up the colour of a bucket. Whilst it might be amusing right now, but hopefully it will work in the exam as well. In the green bucket you will find all the advantages. In the yellow bucket you will find the disadvantages. In the purple bucket you will find the high value connectives that you can select. And last but no means least, And it is the conclusion, and don't think that it's a smaller bucket that means it's less points. This is where you can get your killer points with your justification. Well, we've looked at the methods, the bucket method. That's how we're going to approach these evaluation, these extended questions. So here's a bit of help. We're now going to look at face-to-face interviews. This is the advantages bucket, and we need to actually put advantages of face-to-face interviews in this bucket. So I'm going to give you some facts to start you off. Please don't think that these are the only facts about it. You can add as many as you want to. You can add your own versions if you don't like mine, but this is to give you a starter on the advantages of face-to-face interviews. Now we're looking at the disadvantages. In the yellow bucket, here are some sample information of disadvantages of face-to-face interviews to get your brains whirring. Obviously, you can add to these, you can change these, you can use your own. As this is a revision lesson and we are revising the market research, and we're revising how the content of market research and the facts that you need to put in your coursework in the style of exam questions, I'm going to help you out with another method. I'm going to help you out with questionnaires and surveys. Here's a handful of advantages in the green bucket of advantages for questionnaire surveys. As before, you can use these, you can add some. Definitely need to extend the sentences. These are just bullet point facts, and bullet points are not how you answer a 6-mark question. As Ferrero Rocher says, we are spoiling you. In the yellow bucket, here are a sample of disadvantages of questionnaires and surveys to get your brains whirring and to start thinking about what you might want to write. So this is the revision on disadvantages. Oh, I feel like spoiling you. Here's a little help now also with test marketing. This is where a customer can, or a potential customer, tries out the product, whether it is a toy, a gadget, or taste it if it's food. So that's testing the product before it goes to market. A small sample of advantages in the green bucket for you on test marketing. And if the green advantages bucket is done, then obviously we need to do the yellow disadvantages bucket. So here's a small sample of disadvantages of test marketing for you. Now hopefully you've got the format. I've done 3 methods for you. The other methods, let's have a look at. This is where you need to fill. To start off with your preparation, just put some facts in each of the advantages and disadvantages buckets. So the first one we've got is observation. And the new one I thought I'd throw at you, focus groups. It's not new, but a new icon in front of you. Similar to face-to-face interviews, this one now is phone interviews. And now these will be slightly different to face-to-face interviews because they're going to differ in terms of cost, speed, reach, all sorts of things you can think of. That's just to start you off. So your job now is to choose your 2 methods that you're going to write about in your response to the question. I wouldn't recommend just choosing what you've seen in front of you. What I'd recommend you do is have a practice, have a revision on doing the yellow and green buckets per method, and then you can review what you've put in each bucket and which set of buckets that seem the strongest. I would recommend that's the one that you use as your methods, and obviously it's your 2 strongest. So those bits are for you. But it doesn't end there. I thought you said there were 4 buckets. Yeah, you're absolutely right, there are 4 buckets. What about the high value connectives, the purple bucket? Well, here's a sample of high value connectives for you to use, but I'm not just going to leave you there. I'm going to talk through a quick example of how it's best to use them. If we take, for example, test marketing. There you go, I've refilled the buckets with all the test marketing information, so we've got that to hand. And this is where we need to actually use the buckets analogy, because this is how it's going to work. You take, for example, the advantage can identify product problems. So if we put that in a sentence and say test marketing is an effective method of market research because a company can identify any problem with the products before they go to customers. So for example, Damien could test out a new wax if he wanted to use beeswax for candles. Straight over to the purple bucket now. We want to use one of the connectives and see if we can actually link it to the disadvantage. Now, to start off with, remember we're talking about the identifying product problems. I think very much so I'm going to link it to I'm going to link it to time consuming and expensive to run. So I'm going to talk about that it is good because you can identify product problems. However, it is incredibly time consuming, and so look, can we have another one? Time consuming, therefore it is expensive to run because you're not making your sales whilst you are testing your product, whilst Damien is testing the wax. Now if you can see, then I've actually extended the sentence, which is what you need to do. You need to take a point and see what you can link it with, absolutely with one of the high value connectives in the middle. So that was an example for you, and you need to do that with your two methods. And remember, this is 6 points, so we're looking at doing, say, 2 to 3 advantages per method. 2 absolutely definitely. If you want to do a third one, then that will be your security one, just in case you slipped up on a point beforehand. That would be a good process to go through. But where's the fourth bucket, I hear you say? It is the conclusion bucket. The conclusion bucket is a bit like the purple one. We're going to start it off with some generic, some standard conclusion type connectives. And as a conclusion, this is where you need to refer back to the advantages that you discussed per method. So things like, all things considered, the method, the primary research method most effective for Damien would be test marketing, because don't undervalue the because as a connective when we're evaluating. So that shows you how we've got a reference directly back to the method and we've made it relevant to Damien here. However, Damien should consider the fact that when he's test marketing, he has to pay for it and he's not making sales. So can you see, I've actually referred back to the method, I've linked it here. So I'm going to end it with, on the whole, there's my conclusion adjective. Test marketing is most relevant for the information for Damien, but it might be too expensive because he's a small local business. And you've guessed it, you do the same process for the second method of primary research. You refer back to the method, you use the generic high value conclusion connectives that are put in the grey bucket for you, and you also link it to the disadvantages, because you need to put them together, because you are making something chronological, you're making it logical to follow, and you're linking the two. If you're not linking the two, then you can't get out of mark band 2, you can't get above 3 to 4 points. Here's some Damien specific conclusion connectives for you to think about using as well. So that, my friends, is how to approach the 6-mark question. You follow the bucket method, the colour-coded buckets. So first of all, as a revision, you go through and do your advantages green and disadvantages yellow buckets and see which one you feel is the strongest for you, or see which are the strongest for you. Then you've got to remember the high value purple bucket, because those are your connectives, because you want to link the two. It's all about linking and making sense. And then you nail it with the killer points on the conclusion, because you are making the decision for Damien, you're showing why it's a decision, and you're linking it back to the comments that you've made, and it's all beautifully justified because you're amazing.